What you know, Alibis, welcome to another episode of Pretty Lies and Alibis. I'm Gigi. Good to have you here. It's Wednesday, April 23rd. Hope y'all had a good day. Let's break down what happened today. Back on the stand, Kerry Roberts. The Commonwealth asks who she went into Meadows with. That was Karen and Jen McCabe. She has seen the video of them going into the home from that ring camera on John's property. It's overhead looking down. And when they play the video, you see the three women get out of the two cars and they walk inside. When they came out of John's, Karen pointed at the right taillight. Karen asks, "Do you think I hit him?" Kerry said, "What are you talking about? Let's go find him." She said a square piece of the taillight was missing and a piece of metal was sticking out, and she thought somebody was going to end up and catch their clothes on it. They show a photo of the taillight on the screen there in the courtroom, and she points out the metal part that's sticking out. How many times did Karen ask, "Do you think I hit him?" And the witness said Karen said twice, "Do you think I hit him?" The witness told Karen, "I don't think you hit him, but you hit something." Karen said the same thing at the scene after they found John. Meadows to Fairview is maybe an 8-minute drive, and the witness was driving. On the way there was the talk of Bella's mom who lived near Jen's sister. The witness brought up maybe John went there if he was walking home. Karen was frantic in the car, yelling, and she said you couldn't control her. She doesn't remember what Karen was yelling. She would switch from the back seat back up to in between the two of them in the front. And finally, the witness told her to sit down and buckle up. When they got to Fairview, they saw the shape of the body. Karen was lifting his shirt, trying to warm him up, and the witness was trying to dig his face and head out of the snow. She said his left eye was fine, but his right eye was huge. She told Karen to get off him, and they were going to start CPR. Kerry knew how to do it, and so she started compressions because she knew that was the most important. Karen was doing mouth to mouth. The witness told Jen to go get blankets out of the car, and she wrapped those around his head to try and warm him up. She realized it was John when she cleared the snow off of his face, and he was cold, and she knew he had been there a while. His arms were by his side, and he had blood coming out of his nose and mouth. When she put the blanket under his head, there was blood on the blanket. She never saw or felt glass sticking out of his face. She gave compressions for about 4 or 5 minutes while they were waiting on the EMTs to arrive. And at one point, Jen took over. While she was doing CPR, Karen was running around screaming, "Kerry, Jen, Kerry, Jen." When the EMTs were there, Karen was running around saying, "Did I hit him? Did I hit him? Is he dead?" Kerry said she stood there and watched them work on John, and she was out there for maybe a half hour. She called her husband and her mother, and when they put John in the back of the ambulance, that's when she called John's mom. She said he's been in an accident, and his mom screamed, "I can't do this again." Police put Jen and Karen in the back of a cruiser, and the witness was outside the car looking into the back of the ambulance. Karen was asking if he was dead, and the witness told Karen she can see they're working on him, and at that point, she didn't think he was dead. At some point, she does see Jen and Karen outside of the car. After they leave with John, the witness told his mother she would come get her. The police got her phone number, and so her and Karen went over to the O'Keefes. A cop calls the witness and says Karen's parents are worried she may hurt herself, so they wanted her back at the scene so they could section her. Section her is like an involuntary psychiatric hold. Karen's mom told the witness to make sure she didn't get her bag because she had medications in there. Karen gets in an ambulance and Kerry gets her purse. After they lifted John up, she saw his phone laying in a bare spot where the grass was showing. Once he was in the ambulance, she went back to the spot where he was laying to grab that phone and also to get the blankets that she used. The state points out she saw bare grass. She gave his phone to a first responder, and after leaving, that was when she went to John's parents' house. John's dad told the witness that he heard they were trying to warm John up. John's brother was on his way to the hospital as well. Mr. O'Keefe said, "He's gone, Peg," and he slammed his hands on the dashboard. But the witness said at this point, they didn't know for sure that John had passed. Mrs. O'Keefe talked to Karen and asked what happened. "You left him at a party?" Mr. O'Keefe said, "That's enough. She's been through enough already." It took 45 minutes to an hour to get to the hospital. They did talk to Mrs. O'Keefe's niece who works there to see if they were able to come inside due to COVID. They get there and John's brother had already arrived. And then Mrs. O'Keefe's niece came out of her office and told the witness to go wash up because she had blood on her. Kerry asked to go to the chapel. The family went to talk to the doctor, and when they got out, Mrs. O'Keefe said, "He's gone." The witness went into the room and she said John was in a neck brace. There was a trail of blood going to the gurney, and both eyes looked like raccoon eyes and they were purple. She thought he would look better in the hospital, but there was just more blood. They show a photo off screen of John in the hospital, and the witness cries as she sees it. After leaving, Karen called and said her dad was on his way, and could she go bring him to the O'Keefes when he got there. Mr. Reed spoke to John's dad. When they left, the witness drove Mr. O'Keefe and Paul drove Mrs. O'Keefe back to John's house. Before leaving the hospital, the witness said she took a blue rubber bracelet that was made when his sister and her husband passed away, and she says his mom wears it to this day. She dropped Mr. O'Keefe off at John's house and then she went home. The next day, she went back over to John's house to be with family. She said there were a lot of people in and out from all stages of his life. She stayed several hours, but she didn't see Karen there. After this day, her and Jen spoke a lot and they saw each other a lot. They became close and still are to this day. She knew a first responder, Mike Link. It's her daughter's friend's father, and she did speak when she saw him there on scene. She's also friends with his wife. That same day, the witness dropped her daughter off at Mike Link's so her daughter could hang out with his kid. Jen was with the witness, and Mr. Link's wife came out and got in the back seat asking how she was. But she didn't ask anything about the case. The witness said she came to court to support the O'Keefes, but eventually she stopped coming. And once she started to learn more through media, she contacted the district attorney's officer, the victim's advocate, a state trooper, and Michael Morrissey's office. She was interviewed at her house in the evening on the same day she found John. She had a second interview, which took place at Jen's house. She said they were making a timeline, and two officers showed up to question Jen. They separated the two to talk to them. At this point, they still had not had a funeral, and after John passed, the witness still helped out with his niece and nephew. They show a video from the scene that morning. They stop and start several times and ask where she is in the frame. He stops the video at 6:14 and 40 seconds, and that's when the first responders are moving John into the ambulance, and you see Kerry go get the blankets as well as John's phone from the ground. She again confirms the ground did not have snow on it where he was laying. When Jen and Karen were in the police car, Karen asked them to say a prayer. They stop and start the video again several times just to tell who's who in the frame. On cross, he asked how many times she has spoken to someone in the DA's office, and the witness said around 50 times. Then they start to go through who she's talked to and how often. As far as the victim's advocate, maybe 30 to 40 times, and that's mostly through text message. She would ask questions about the case, and he would give her broad answers. She had a rapport with him, and sometimes she would ask questions for Jen. Yuri Buchanan, a Massachusetts state police officer, she communicated about 20 times via phone, text, as well as in person. The DA, Michael Morrissey, she said during the course of the trial, witnesses have been harassed, and the defense says that's not my question. And she says, but I'm answering your question. She called the office asking for a meeting, and she had that meeting. And then he left her a voicemail at some point and also texted her that he had left a voicemail. She had one other meeting with him and other witnesses. As far as Mr. Brennan, she's met with him twice, once within the last couple of weeks, and most recently last week at the DA's office. They watched her testimony on screen from the last trial. And at the meeting, she was asking questions like, would she be cross-examined? Because last time she wasn't. And also, they just went over her testimony for this trial. At other times, there were other people there. Steve Nelson, Brian Tully, Mr. Brennan's assistant, Laura McLaughlin, and Adam Lally. The defense references the dash cam that's been shown in court and asks if she remembers when the officer first arrived. He says, you and Karen were at John's body, but where was Jen? The witness said she was waving down the first responders because it was hard to see. He said, you gave some level of life-saving efforts. The witness said Jen was on the phone with 911 or handing her baby blankets, and at some point she did take over compressions for her. Karen was giving mouth-to-mouth. When Jen dialed 911, was she in a car? The witness said she was outside. He asked if she heard the 911 call. Yes. He asks if she's aware the call was captured by an open line on Karen Reed's phone. So Jen would have had to have been inside. But Kerry said the back hatch of the SUV was open and she was standing there. Do you remember Karen saying, my boyfriend, I left him, he never came home? No. Moving on to John's injuries. You saw a hematoma over his right eye and swelling at the scene. Did you notice a laceration above his right eye? She saw it at the hospital. He asked her about a small laceration on the left side of his nose. She did not see that, but she did see blood on the left side around the nostril, and the blood was just going down the left side of his cheek. Also at the hospital, both eyes were swollen and filled with what looked like blood. She did see the wounds on his right arm, and she calls those scratches. Back to the morning of. After she met up with Karen at Jen's house just after 5 a.m., they go back to One Meadows. She is following the Lexus, and then she pulls behind them in the driveway. The defense, you said when you got out of the car, that's when Karen showed you the taillight and said, do you think I hit him? Kerry said, I don't know if it was when we were coming or going, but she did point it out. The defense, your grand jury testimony was, Karen pulls in and I pull in behind her. When we get out, Karen is now showing us the back of her car and she says, my taillight. Do you think I hit him? Oh my God, do you guys think I hit him? Kerry asks to see the transcript and asks if he has the pages after the ones she's reading. He said, my question is that testimony accurate? And she says yes. He does give her the other pages, and Kerry says what she's looking for isn't here because she said she wasn't sure if she was shown the taillight before or after. But the defense says this is from your grand jury testimony from April 26 of 22. You were under oath and you were asked about pulling in. There's two cars and then a single car. John's car's there. Karen pulls in and I pull in behind her. We get out and she shows the back of the car and she says, do you think I hit him? Do you think I hit him? Oh my God, do you think I hit him? He plays that video from John's ring cam. You see Karen and Jen get out of the one car. Kerry gets out of hers and they walk straight into the house and don't go behind the car. The defense asks, did anyone stop and look at the rear of the car? Kerry says not when entering like she thought, but when they came out, they did, and there's no video of that. The defense says, but the video describes the exact time you testified you stopped, and she said that. The witness agrees. Kerry was interviewed January 29th by two officers when things were fresh. Kerry said she was still in shock. The defense asked, in that conversation, you didn't mention anything about seeing a cracked taillight? No, I didn't want to accuse anyone of anything. Kerry was interviewed again February 1st of 22, and the defense asks, Did you tell them you noticed the back right tail light in the middle was broken and there was a piece of metal pushed forward? You didn't say it was shattered or the entire lens was missing. You said it was broken in the middle. And today, you said a square piece was missing. The witness says, yes, that's what I meant. A square was missing in the middle. March 7th, 2023, there is a text with the victim's advocate, Steve Nelson. Do you remember communicating about the Ring camera at John's? And she does. Is it true you contacted him to say the O'Keefes wanted to replace the same Ring camera we just saw? Yes. Did Mr. Nelson say he thought it would be fine? The witness doesn't remember who said it, but somebody told them they could replace it. And at some point, she was informed the O'Keefes had the green light to replace the camera, and so she relayed that to them. Did you get a response from the DA's office asking to wait so they could do a reconstruction or to be sure the camera was in the same spot at the time of the incident? No. They did end up and replace the camera. He asked if she knows the date she talked to Mr. Nelson about replacing the camera. She looks over a transcript, and that date is March 7th of 2023. The defense attorney talks about her relationship with Canton officer Michael Lang, whose daughter is friends with her daughter. You're aware he's also friend with the Alberts and grew up with Chris. She did not know that. The defense says he was one of the first to the scene. She did recognize him, but did not have a conversation with him. The witness said, Mike, is that you? And he said, yes. The defense asks, the next day you dropped your daughter off and you took Jennifer with you? Kerry said she picked up Jennifer from her house and one or two of her daughters. They then drove to the O'Keefes, left a couple of kids there, and then took her daughter to the Langs. After that, she took Jennifer back to the house and she had no kids with her. Did anyone stop at Fairview on the way or back? Kerry doesn't think so because it's not the route you would take to get to her house. The defense, you said you stayed there 45 minutes at the Langs and his wife got in the back seat. Did you go inside? No. The witness said Jennifer went in to use the restroom, and when asked if Mike was there, she does not know. The defense talks about Jennifer asking her to contact the victim's advocate to ask questions. How many times? Kerry says maybe 4, but not many. She would then report that information back to Jennifer. And the defense asks, you understand the importance of providing information to law enforcement free of influence from other people? And the witness says yes. The defense, the first time you told your story to law enforcement was January 29th. You were in your dining room. Only her husband was home. She didn't think that interview was recorded, but she did see the troopers taking notes. The defense asks about a call she got from Jen just before the interview started at 5:25 p.m. Did you tell her you were about to be interviewed and the officers had arrived? The witness doesn't think so. So he asked, did she text you, call me right after? Again, she doesn't know. In the interview, when it was still fresh in your mind, you said at 5 a.m., Karen called saying John never came home and she was worried. Maybe he was walking and got hit by a plow. You meet at Jennifer's and Karen was hysterical. She was worried something happened. Once on scene, Karen saw him and ran up to him and asked, is he dead? Over and over. And if anything happened to John, she would harm herself. There is an objection that's sustained. He asked a few times if the troopers told her if she had anything useful to add to please do so. She doesn't know. You never said my client called you at 5 a.m. and said he's dead and hung up. She said she didn't remember that until a couple of days later. The defense asks, when you heard her say that, you didn't think she did something? No. And the defense says one other thing you didn't add was anything about the taillight or nothing about a Google search or praying. The witness doesn't remember. February 1st, there is another interview at Jennifer's house. Kerry and Jennifer met beforehand, and they were helping each other put together a timeline at the request of Mrs. O'Keefe. The defense says you were assisting each other's memories. Obviously, that would help influence your memory. So what's on the timeline is not completely independent of your memory. It's both of yours. And the witness says yes. She said the timeline wasn't intended for the interview. There were two officers that just happened to show up to interview Jennifer when she was there. He asked, did you become aware of text messages Jennifer sent in a group chat talking about you in that interview? No. The defense says she sent texts to a group that she listened in on your interview. Kerry says, I don't think she could hear me. But the defense says you're not aware she texted this group. She's telling them everything, all this stuff. There's an objection that's sustained. Have you been provided or told about this text suggesting she was listening to your interview? No. The third time you told your story was later that night on the phone with Trooper Proctor, and the witness said she wanted to tell him that she remembered that first call from Karen at 5 a.m. She was still at Jennifer's house, but she did step away to talk. Jennifer's sister Denise was also there, and she was writing down the things as Jennifer and Kerry were recalling them for that timeline. Trooper Proctor was on the phone with Jennifer, and Kerry asked to talk to him. The defense, the fourth time you talked to authorities was February 2nd at 12:08 p.m., and you signed a consent for your phone. The witness said this was around when Karen was arraigned, and she handed over her phone. He says the fifth time you told your story was in front of the grand jury. You were brought into a room waiting to be called. Who was with you? She said, my husband and Jen and Matt McCabe. The defense says, so Jen was with you again before you gave testimony? Yes. He asked, when did you last talk to her before testifying? And the witness said, this morning. Did you discuss your testimony? No. He says, so you talked as recently as today and you say you didn't discuss your testimony. The witness said, no, she called to wish me good luck. The defense, do you remember saying you did or did not recall texting Jen during the January 29th interview with state police? She doesn't think she did. So the defense asks if it would refresh her memory to look at a phone report. He gives it to her and asks if she remembers texting Jen the state troopers were just getting there. No. Do you remember her texting, call me back? No. Did you call her after the interview? The witness doesn't know. The defense, have you ever testified at the scene Miss Reed was seated in the back of the patrol car with Jennifer and you were standing outside the car and there was an interaction with the three of you and you said Karen asked you guys to pray? Yes. Do you remember saying Karen asked Jennifer to Google hypothermia? No. Moving on, April 26th of 2022, you testified to the grand jury under oath, swore to tell the truth under penalty of perjury. You testified you have never or don't recall Karen asking Jen to Google hypothermia. So he gives her a transcript. He says you testified at the grand jury. Karen was in the back seat of the police cruiser and said, Karen, Jen, and I were standing outside. And Karen made us all hold hands and pray. And he asked at this point, had they taken John on the gurney, but the witness doesn't remember. He gives her a transcript again and says, you think that was the point when they lifted John up and put him in the ambulance? And you were asked, what did Karen ask Jen that you heard? There's an objection, and the judge asked the witness if she remembers. She says she does not remember hearing her say that. But the defense says that's not what I was going to ask. He repeats that you were asked what Karen asked Jen that you heard. She still doesn't remember. He approaches again with the transcript and says, your response was, quote, at one point she asked her to Google hypothermia and how long Google hypothermia, end quote. And the witness says yes. The defense says that's a specific recount of the event. She says she thought it was about that time, but wasn't sure. The defense says you were so detailed, you knew where you were standing, what they were doing, and the actual words used. And you'll agree, you painted a detailed picture in front of the grand jury, except it wasn't true, was it? Kerry says, I didn't hear that. I was told that's what she asked. The defense, but what you told the grand jury wasn't true. You never heard my client ask anyone to Google anything, and the witness said, I did not. The defense says, yet that's what you testified to under oath, under penalty of perjury. The witness said, I did. And the reason you said that false statement was someone told you to say it. And the witness says, nobody told me. I knew it happened at the time we wrote a timeline. So he says the timeline Jennifer helped you with that influenced your testimony to the grand jury. She said, I was telling what happened in the back of the cruiser. The defense says with Jennifer's help, it influenced your testimony to the grand jury to a statement you never heard. And the witness says yes. He moves on and said, you were later asked about that by other investigators, a separate law enforcement agency from the Massachusetts police. And you were told if you were to lie to those agents, it would be a crime punishable by prison. She said she wasn't told that. He asks if you heard Karen say anything to Jennifer about Googling anything, and the witness doesn't know. The defense says, but you told them what you just now told us, which is I didn't hear Karen ask Jennifer to conduct any searches. The witness doesn't recall. He brings in a copy of the interview, tells her to turn to a certain page and says, does that refresh your recollection? Which is, you did not hear Karen ask Jennifer to conduct any searches. You went on to say you saw Jennifer on her phone, but didn't hear Karen ask Jennifer to Google anything. And the witness says that's correct. So what you told the grand jury was false? And the witness said she misunderstood the question at the grand jury. The state was back up for redirect. When you spoke to the grand jury, were you honest? Yes. She said she never told them she specifically heard Karen say those things. The state, after you found John, did anyone tell you you weren't allowed to discuss what you just went through or have the support of other people? No. The witness said this was a traumatic event and she spoke to people about what happened. And she said, I'm friends with Jennifer. We went through a traumatic experience together, but we also talked to many other people. She said it helps her get through. People like John's family and friends, his parents. The state asked, were you told where she dropped John off, or was it suggested he went in the house? No. She says she does remember seeing that taillight and it wasn't simply cracked. She's asked, despite no video, are you certain you saw it? Yes. The next witness, Mrs. O'Keefe, John's mother. How long have you been married? And she says too long, 53 years, and sounds like everybody in the courtroom had a little chuckle. They moved to Canton 3 years ago from Braintree, and they lived there 50 years. She cries talking about her daughter, Kristen, who had a brain tumor for 5 months and then passed away back in November of 2013. Her daughter had 2 children, and 2 months later, her daughter's husband passed away from a heart attack. And she tells the jury, you know all about John. She says her son, Paul, is over there in the courtroom. Her daughter had 2 kids. They are now 17 and 14. They were 3 and 6 when their mother died. There were 4 guardians for the kids, and John was the primary. She said he was single and he wanted to do it. She was over there most of the time helping out and would take the kids on the weekends to give John a break. She said John was enthusiastic with sports. He was wonderful with the kids. The kids called him JJ, and he was their number one. They show a photo of John to her, and she thinks he was around 45 when that photo was taken. January 29th, 2022, she was home in Braintree with her husband, and Kerry Roberts called around 6 or 6:15 that morning. She knew Kerry from years before. Kerry tells her John was found in a snowbank and they don't know what happened. He's at Good Samaritan, and she says she's going to come and get her and Papa because she didn't want them driving. Mrs. O'Keefe tried to call her niece who worked there but could not get a hold of her. On the drive to the hospital, she talked to Karen and asked what happened. Karen said he went to a party and I left him there. John's mother said, you left him there, but she didn't say where she left him. At the hospital, they take them into a room, and as she's walking, she hears Karen yelling, Peg, is he dead? Peg said she just kept walking and asked a nurse, what is she doing here? The nurse said Karen was being evaluated. They took them to see John. She said his eyes were bruised and closed, and it was not a good scene. She rode home with Paul, and her husband rode with Kerry. The kids got home, and then there was a knock at the door. It was Karen, her dad, and brother. She said her grandson was out of control, just yelling, very upset about John, and Karen wanted to go get some of her things. Mrs. O'Keefe said she shouldn't have let him in, and she doesn't know what they got up there or what they did. They were upstairs for maybe 10 to 15 minutes. She did not see them come back down. Her focus was her grandson, who was obviously very upset. They asked, "Did you ever say to Karen, it looks like he got hit by a car?" And Mrs. O'Keefe says no. As of now, the kids have 4 guardians, and the kids live with her full time. There was no cross. Mr. Jackson got up and said he's very sorry for her loss, and he has no questions for her. The next witness, Nicholas Guarino. He's a Massachusetts State Police officer who does cell phone extraction. He did extractions and analysis for several phones. He got John's phone the day he died, January 29th, between 7 and 7:30 p.m. from Trooper Proctor and another person there at the DA's office. They did not have the passcode, but they did get it January 31st from a family member. He did an extraction on Karen's phone. He got that the same day he got John's. They were waiting for a warrant, so he secured the phone in a room that has key card access, and only 2 other people have access to that room, and is armed. He did not have Karen's passcode. They had to wait until July of 2022 for this software to upgrade to be able to get her passcode. He also had Kerry Roberts and Jen McCabe's phones. He went through and isolated reports for John's calls for a period of time, calls and texts between John and Karen, John and other people like Jennifer and Kerry. He says he waits for the prosecution to request these things. He knows very little about this case. He may help them narrow down things if needed, and that was the bulk of his testimony. He's just introducing these extractions. Later on in the trial, we're going to have somebody break out the text messages. The last witness of the day, Daniel Whitley. He is a Canton EMT and firefighter and responded to the scene. His partner that day was Jason Becker. He knew Kerry Roberts. They live in the same neighborhood, and she organized block parties, and sometimes he helped. Other than that, they really didn't know each other very well. He met with Karen when they were in the process of getting her to the hospital. He was there to take her for this evaluation. She was upset, crying, but they had an order in hand to take her for that psychiatric evaluation. She was arguing she did not need to go, but the witness said once the Section 12 is written, they have to get her there regardless, whether they sedate her, restrain her, but in the end, she agreed to go. She kept asking if there was any chance John could be alive, even if he was outside in the snow with no coat for many hours. She asked this maybe 3-4 times, possibly more. He told her stories of kids that fell through the ice and came out okay. He was doing this mainly to calm her down. One time she kept saying, "I can't take care of these kids. They're not my kids. They're not his kids." The witness said he told her, "You have a strong support system." He said Karen lifted up her head and asked if he knew Kerry Roberts, and he said he did. Karen said anyone who knows Kerry wouldn't say that about her. He said she came out in a blizzard early to help you look for John, and Karen rolled her eyes and put her head back down. Once at the hospital, they hand off care. They give a report to a nurse, and they tell what they found taking her to the hospital. They usually leave pretty quickly after, but Karen was not cooperating with the nurse, who was asking for a urine sample, and also they couldn't get her to put on a hospital gown. They didn't feel comfortable just leaving the nurse with Karen. She finally did cooperate, and at that point, security had shown up, so they felt okay leaving. On Cross, he drove the ambulance to the residence on Fairview, and John was already gone from the scene when he got there. There were at least 2 police cars on scene as well as a fire engine. He knew some of the police on scene, and he says Canton is a small town and their paths cross a lot. There were also civilians on scene, and there was just a lot of activity there. Lights, cars. The defense asked, "Did you ever see the homeowner come out of his house?" The witness said he did not focus on the house at all. The defense. Her medical history is she has chronic multiple sclerosis. A major focus for her was whether John was alive or dead. And you mentioned how long someone could survive with no jacket in the snow for hours, and you assumed hypothermia. You're not a doctor, and you don't know if your assumption was correct or incorrect. The witness said he knew they were working him as a hypothermia patient, but he doesn't know if his assumption was correct. He was just trying to give her a little hope he could be alive. The defense mentions Karen's demeanor changing when the witness mentioned Kerry Roberts. And the defense asks if he said Karen was being snarky, and he says he did. February 8th, 2022, the witness was interviewed. Was your memory better back then? The witness says this case sticks out. Are you saying your memory gets better over time? No. The defense, 10 days later, you never mentioned to the police that Karen was being snarky. He says he doesn't know if he did or didn't. He's asked if he and Kerry are still neighbors, and they are. Before you met Karen that day, you had interacted with Kerry, like on the Facebook neighborhood page. She wanted a fire truck for the block party, and you said you would get one? Yes. The defense, Proctor was the first lead investigator in this case, and he interviewed you. You didn't go to school with Karen or coordinate neighborhood block parties with Karen? No. Your team has a patient care report from that day, and it's timed at 9:03 a.m. And what they listed for primary impression, which is what they think the patient is suffering from. So they checked behavioral and psychiatric episode. And the defense says nothing about snarkiness? No. For secondary impression, the witness chose anxiety and emotional upset. The defense, any snarkiness? No. Signs and symptoms, snarkiness isn't mentioned. And in the patient care record, it's recorded Karen was found sitting in front of the passenger seat of a friend's car, visibly upset but cooperative. Nowhere is it listed she was snarky. No. And that was it for a cross. On a redirect, they talk about Karen calling someone named Papa, which is John's dad. The witness said he's just learning this now. And that was pretty much it for today. So join us tomorrow for the live stream starting at 9. Tomorrow night, I'll have a new recap episode out for you. Hope you have a good rest of your evening. We will see you soon.